Firekeeper. 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 Firekeeper.
Our ancestors not only survived because of fire, they thrived. Probably the two most vital skills that helped literally take over the world were stone tool making and firekeeping. Fire, instead of fire, by definition here, is when it is used as a means of supporting life. There has always been a human need for fire. Here are some ways fire is a necessary life supporter: heat, light, drying, purifying water, signaling, communication, protection, tool making, coal burning containers, firing pottery, insect repellent, smoking and preserving food and animal hides, cooking, just to name some obvious ones. From a primitive survival point of view, it's important to clarify the difference between the needs and the skills. There is a theory of an order to some of these skills. It goes shelter, water, fire, food. However, these are in order of physiological need, not in order of skill. So in extreme weather, insulation from the elements will save your life. Then hydration is necessary, second, because you will deteriorate in a few days. Fire will be necessary for all other things mentioned, and if you don't have a metabolic disorder, you could go a few weeks without food. Now, they are not in order of skills necessary to fulfill or acquire these needs. Since we are focusing on the life supporter of fire, we will only talk about those. So what do you need for the need? In order for a firekeeper to acquire fire, one needs no less than 4 skills that are all interrelated and inseparable. 1 is friction fire woodworking. 2, stone tool making and using. 3, cordage making and using. 4, plant and tree identification. In this modern day, we will also need to know how to safely and properly use hand and power tools. This is a den show on friction firekeeping, so it will not specifically go into plant and tree identification. There are hundreds of resources, including people, books, and the internet. And this is an entire course in itself, and too extensive to cover. Remember, extreme care must be taken, especially with dangerous plants and trees. Stone tools. This is also an entire course in itself. But concerning friction fire woodworking with stone tools, you will need to know the 6 necessary principal functions and uses, which also apply to all other hand and power tools. I highly recommend learning the skill of stone tool making, also called flint knapping. There are also numerous resources for learning, but the best way is by an instructor, and there are many out there. Warning, this is an addicting skill. I used to joke that some need, including myself, a 12-step program for it. Here is a story to be told in context. About 20 years ago, I took a course with a master flint knapper, Dr. Eric Callahan, with some friends. Out of the whole wonderful instruction, I walked away with an interesting perspective. He said something in which I'm not sure whether or not the others realized its value. He asked, "Do you want to make an arrowhead, or do you want to learn how to make stone tools?" Let me tell you, in the art and science of flint knapping, you can make arrowhead points that look better than jewelry. And making such displayed works of art can be a great source of pride. But Dr. Callahan warns us never to forget its original function and purpose. That the stone tools are made to be useful, functional tools, and you had to think about what you are there to learn. The principles of stone tool making, not just beautiful knives or points. Also, since I am an instructor of stone tool making as well, I highly recommend learning only on obsidian, which is volcanic glass, at first. My reasoning for this is you learn how the best stone breaks, so you could see principles in action. Then when you're working with harder and less workable stone, you already know how and what you are trying to acquire. This lesson will apply to the woods we will begin with in fire making. The 6 main stone tool functions are the straight edge, the perpendicular edge, drilling, piercing. 5th is pounding, bashing. 6th is abrading and sanding. Now, some stones are structured better than others for these different functions. For example, igneous rocks, the rocks born in fire from magma and lava, make the sharpest edges. Rhyolites, basalts, obsidian, things like that. But they're also very brittle, even though they have very sharp edges. Now, the metamorphics and the sedimentaries are best known for pounding and abrading due to their grainy nature. Now, it's very important that you're aware of safety aspects whenever you're doing stone tool making. One is shards that go flying, so you should always have a pair of safety goggles on, or safety glasses. The other thing is that when you are working with these kind of rocks, they're made of silicon, and the fine dust that is made from their breaking and pounding and abrading, the dust is full of silicon dust, and that should not get in your lungs, because what it'll do is cause silicosis over a period of time. And silicosis is a lot like almost asbestosis, or something like that, where it destroys your lung function, causes a lot of scarring in your lungs, and you'll have emphysema, and it's a pretty poor life to live once that happens. So the other thing is too, that dust, it'll settle on your skin, it'll settle on your clothes. So when you're done, you always take a shower, you always wash your clothes. So regarding the silicosis, you want to make sure that you, if you're doing that for a period of time, that you're wearing a dust mask. And a pretty good one too, like the N95 type style of dust mask, which has very good filtration. But anytime you're doing flint knapping, and just like when you're doing firekeeping, you need to be in a well-ventilated area all the time, so that all the dust blows away, so you don't breathe that in. Another safety aspect that needs to be considered when you're dealing with sharp rocks like obsidian is you should wear gloves. This stuff is sharper than scalpels, because when an edge breaks, it goes down to the micron level, and it's super sharp. So, and you'll be very easily cut. And don't think that you won't get cut, because you will. You have a whole bunch of little cuts all the time. So the first thing we're going to do here is get us a flake. Now these are flakes. These pieces here, which come off, they have edges. Now when you practice, you can make what are called blades. And you can see they have the one ridge down along the back here, one ridge. So these are specifically called blades. They're longer than they are wider, but for now a flake will suffice. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a piece of obsidian. I guess we'll work on, try a piece off right here. Now there's 4 main principles you need to keep in mind when you're doing stone tool making, but this is not a stone tool workshop. And So we're going to take our round hammerstone, which is a sedimentary or metamorphic rock, and we are going to take our rock that we're going to hit, which is a piece of black obsidian, and this is a leg pad which would sit on your leg if you were sitting, but we're going to do this right on the table. And I have my eyeglasses on, which you really can't see, but here we're going to hit below the middle of the rock, called center line or the center plane. We're going to hit in a place that's called a platform, which is like a shelf that juts out a little bit. Okay. And we're going to send through it a shock wave and remove a flake. So we're going to rub that for luck. That's our platform. We're going to set up for our strike, and we're going to remove us a flake. Ready? So we got us a flake, a couple flakes actually. Let's see if we can get a larger one and try that again. Ready? There we go. So we got us a good sized flake. It's got a very sharp edge, though it's very brittle. You wouldn't use this really for woodworking. I'm going to clean up that edge. Now that we have a flake for demonstration of how that was removed, we're going to use this piece right here. Here we have a piece of wood. It's actually a piece of sodal. Now here's those 6 functions. So what we'll do is, the first one is the straight edge. So you take the edge and you actually go along the length of the entire edge, cutting that way. So this is knifing or sawing. You can see here we're making a pretty good groove. This is especially useful for when you're doing things like making a notch, things like that. So we're going straight along the edge this way. Now, the second part is called the perpendicular edge, and that's where the edge faces flat up against what you're going to carve, and we're going to pull this way. So this is like draw knifing or scraping, or if you had an axe head, okay, this would be like adzing, chopping like that, getting pieces off. So, but for fine woodworking, it's good for things like this. And this is a sharp piece of flint, is what that is. Now, another aspect is drilling. That's where you take the point, you go in, and you go in on an axis to make a hole. Now, the sharp ones, the point is going to be very brittle, so you have to be very careful. So you might want to take something that's actually a little thicker, with a thicker point, and go in that way to make a hole. Usually you would do this with pieces that you don't care about. So if you're making a work of art with your stone, you wouldn't do this with that piece. You just find one of these random flakes that has some kind of point on it, and you just go ahead and start drilling. But this would be normally the point of your knife. So now piercing is one that we won't be using as a function in friction fire. So this is for like using an atlatl dart or spear or knifing, something like that, but that function isn't particularly used here. So the two that you will be using though are bashing and pounding and hammering. So if you have a piece of cordage that you wanted to break up, so you would do it that way. You have some fibers you want to break up. If you have a something that you need to separate. You can get your stone wedge, separate it that way. So, if you need to break firewood, small pieces, you could do it that way for safety. And then finally, we have a braiding and sanding, where you're doing some finer woodworking and you need to take stuff down. Now the metamorphics or the sedimentary rocks are usually best for this purpose, and you just take your time and get it to the shape that you need to take that down. So, and that's basically the 6 primary functions of stone tools. But of course, they will all vary in shape and size, and depending on what materials you have. In following our theme, cordages that are used in the friction fire dojo methods for balancing life-supporting purposes, I call fibers. Clarifying the why or the life need we need to balance here is cordage making in order to operate a friction fire method to get fire. In the how part, there are 2 important variables that require balancing: flexibility and tensile strength. Flexibility because it may need to wrap around multiple times under stress. Tensile strength because it must survive pulling on both ends. What could be the possible forms, structures, or variations we could find naturally? There are 3 main sources: plant, tree, and animal. The first plant stock we'll go over is Velvetleaf, and this comes from the outside of the stalk. As you can see when you pull it apart, it has a lot of fibers. So let's take a piece of Velvetleaf here. This is the stalk, piece of the plant, and when you take the bark off the plant, it comes off in fibers, and you would twist these to make cordage. Similar is dogbane, which is an excellent fiber. There's a little bit of down stuck in there too, or seeds. So a dogbane spindle. Here. So if I take one of these stalks here, now it has a hollow pith. So what you do is you crush this like this into quarters. It'll break into 4 sections, as you can see. And then what you do is you break the pith side out, away from the skin, and push the pith off, push the pith off, push the pith off, and you're left with the fibrous inner bark. Fibrous inner bark. Gotta kind of work off the brown outer bark and then separate the fibers. Same thing with milkweed. Now the key thing with these is you have to get them at the right time of the year. When it's winter here in New Jersey, let's crush this. So we crush that one. When it's winter, that's the time to collect stalk plants. because you have to wait until they've fully developed and they die. So again, we're going to break it into quarters, break out the pith, pull off the fiber, work the outside, take off that, and you're left with the fibers that you can twist to make cordage. Okay, but we're going to do the reverse wrap soon. Another example of a plant bast fiber is jute, which quite conveniently you can get at any pretty much supermarket, if not any hardware store. It comes in rolls, brown in its natural color, and it's pre-twisted. And what you would do is you, for tinder purposes, which is what we usually use this for, is we untwist it and we take it apart again for tinder bundles. But it's a great cordage. Very strong, very flexible. But it is a natural plant fiber. Here we have some examples of tree inner bark. This one is Atlantic white cedar. And off the dead section of a tree, okay, when you peel the bark, there's an outer bark and an inner bark. And it's on the inside of that bark that you'll see a lot of fiber, which you would break up into and separate the fibers. So here we have an example of some Atlantic white cedar inner bark twisted into a cordage. And you can see it's twisted together in the reverse wrap method, which I will go over. Okay. Here we have an example of tulip poplar inner bark. And tulip poplar is very good. The bark literally comes off in sheets, and there's loads and loads of it, as you can see. It's also very strong. So we'll take one section here, which you can see, and we're going to break that up like that, and get it to separate. See that? That separates real nice. And then it's flexible, and then twistable for cordage making. Okay. Another example here is elm. Elm pieces that come off in sheets. Now this was coiled and just put away. This one, taken off, was just twisted. It even still has the outer bark on it. Ready to use as a string for friction fire method. Here's another one. Here's another elm. This one's a little tighter twisted, and a lot stronger. Another natural plant fiber is Raffia, which is imported. And if you want to use natural fibers but can't collect them or don't know where to find them, they come in any craft store usually. And this is the natural brown, which is not dyed. Here there's some other colors, black, yellow, and red. So, but this is very strong. And you could just separate them if necessary into smaller pieces, but it twists very well. It's very flexible, has good tensile strength, which is what we need, and twists nice and easily in order for cordage making. Here we have an example of just using wood fibers. Here is a oak branch that has been pounded where the fibers separate and twisted. And this is usually used green. So you take it right off from the tree. This was a scrub oak branch from South Jersey. You can also use pine rootlets. A lot of evergreen rootlets can do the same thing. Just pull them out of the ground, nice and long. Pound them to separate them a little bit, break them up, twist them, and then use it as a cordage right away. Now you have to be careful that once these things dry out, they break really easily, okay, once they're dry. You have to use them green and fresh usually when you're doing that. But otherwise, it's for something quick and right away. Some other possibilities are rattan. This is a rattan strip, which is very flexible, as you can see, and is very strong, has very good tensile strength. But you have to, if you want to use a natural cordage, obviously you would probably have to purchase these unless you're in a place where rattan is naturally occurring. Actually, where any of these are naturally found. So, the other thing that could be used too is bamboo, which is similar, but it's not very flexible. Once you start twisting it like this, it starts to fray. But if you needed something to use sort of like a cord that you don't need flexibility with, it has awesome tensile strength. So, and getting into animal parts, this is strips of rawhide. This came off an actual deer hide and cut into strips. You can still see there's some fur on it. Now, if you wanted to try it with rawhide now and don't want to work with a deer hide, you could always use dog chews. So just soak them in water until they're fully soft. Soak them in water until they're fully soft, and then you can unravel them here. And then you just take a scissor and cut it in a spiral. And as you cut it in a spiral, you cut it at just the width that you need, and you get yourself one long piece of cordage. And then you would twist that into something like this. This is a rawhide braid. It's very strong, it's very flexible, has awesome tensile strength, very hard to break, and you can use it for any of your friction fire methods. Now, another animal product is sinew. This is backstrap sinew, and it's connective tissue like a ligament. This one runs along the back, along the spinal column. There's also leg sinews, which are found in like the forehoof areas of deer, and cows, and elk, things like that. And what you want to do with these is they're covered in a sheath, so you let them dry out, and then you would bang it between a rock and a piece of hardwood. Try not to use two rocks, because what you'll do is you'll cut the fibers as the rocks hit together, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to cut the fibers. You just want to separate them into pieces like this. And then you would wet this, and you can, it's very flexible, has good tensile strength. The sinew is almost indestructible, practically, once it's together. And then you could twist it and braid it as needed. Now, the other option you can use is called gut, which is you use the intestines. You clean out the intestines of an animal and use that lining of the intestine, and you would twist and braid that, which I don't have. So, Raffia comes from the palm family, and here we're going to demonstrate the reverse wrap. Here I've taken a natural colored piece of raffia and a red one, so you can see the difference. Now what I've done too is we're going to do the splice as well. And when you're going to do a splice, you have to make sure that your ends are not even, that the ends are not together at the same length. One has to be shorter than the other. So we've done that here. Both of these ends, one is shorter than the other. Okay. Now to begin, to do the reverse wrap, you have to stabilize your ends. So we're just going to tie these together just to start. You can do any way you like, but I'm just going to make a knot. Okay, there's our start. Now, this is really actually a very easy process. You take your, like if you're making an OK with your hand, the thumb and your first finger twist away. Twist away. Twist up and away. Okay? Up and away. And then what you do is, as you twist up and away, hold it, and with your third finger, okay, with your middle finger, grab the other cord with your pointer finger and turn it back toward you. You're going to go up and back. And then this hand is going to pinch that twist. So now, the one that was on the bottom is now the top. So we're going to twist nice and tight, up and away, grab, bring it back, and grab that twist. See, I'm going to choke up on that. Now, the natural colored one is on top again. So we're going to twist away, up and away, and grab. Bring it back, hold. Nice and tight, twist up and away, grab, back. This is the reverse wrap. And it's very simple and very easy to do. So we twist up and away, grab, up and away, grab, up and away, grab. Up and away, grab, up and away, grab. Grab, bring it back, choke up on it, grab that, twist, up and away, grab, up and away, grab. And you can see it's starting to form a nice chain there. The colors make it easy to see. Okay, so we're going to go just a little bit more. Up and away, grab, up and away, grab. Now to practice this, what I used to do is when we were at a restaurant, you take the paper off a straw for your drink, and we would twist those. We do that for fun. Okay, so now we have just a section here that's done. Now, what if you want it thicker or stronger? Well, you would take this and you would double it over. So if this was your middle, you would twist this the opposite way and it'll kink. See that? Grab the kink, and now everything is going to be opposite. Now if you started with your right hand doing the twist, your left hand is going to do the twist now. So it's up and back, grab, pull back, grab the twist. Grab, twist, grab, twist, grab, twist, grab. And this is what you would do with all those fibers. The plant fibers, tree fibers, the animal products, as soon as they're all fixed. So in here we have a double reverse wrap braid. Very strong. This is going to last a good long while if I were to use this on a friction fire method. Now we're going to do the splice. So here's our piece, and we've run out of length. So what we want to do is add length to this piece. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to sort of make this side sort of the same thickness Okay, so we're going to remove some raffia from this piece. And what we're going to do is, now remember they're different lengths. So what's going to happen is we're going to try to separate this fiber a little bit, the short one, and we're going to separate the one we're going to join with. And we're going to kind of intermingle them a little bit so they kind of come together like fingers. And we're going to twist them sort of together to join them. Now, if I were to start twisting here, we're going to do the twist, grab, twist, grab, twist, grab, twist, grab, twist, grab. Now the splice gets joined right up in that. Twist, grab, twist, grab. And there we go. And your splice is, you can see there's the short length sticking out here. We'll finish that off. Sometimes it's easier if you pre-twist your fibers, if you can, with something like a drop spindle or something like that, which we're not going to do today. And there's your splice in between the fibers put together. Flexibility, tensile strength. If you're lucky, some grasses may also work very well. Some people even use long leaves. I had a friend, Barry Keegan, who once showed us, he took corn husk leaves. He literally took corn husk leaves, wrapped them together, twisted them together, and did a bow drill in front of us just to show us how well it could work. So there's many things out there as long as they follow those two rules, flexibility and tensile strength. But we are going to use ordinary store-bought cordage just for demo purposes of all the techniques. And to remember to be careful that you're not using anything you shouldn't that's toxic. So poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac. You may see some things like hairy vines, which is hard to see through the plastic here, but obviously I'm not going to take it out, touch it. But plant and tree identification are vital.